Sometime around 1990, Jehovah's Witnesses in Denmark submitted architectural plans to the governing body for an assembly hall, a Congress hall as they are called in Europe, located on the outskirts of a town called Silkeborg, the approximate center of Denmark. The request was approved and the Congress hall was constructed. According to the 1993 yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses, the facility was dedicated to Jehovah on June the 1st, 1991, with governing body Representative Lloyd Berry presiding. The Congress Hall has been in use ever since. The facility is unusual as far as assembly halls go, in that it is a partially covered outdoor amphitheater. The convention grounds cover some 40 acres and serve as campgrounds able to accommodate up to 1,000 trailers and tents. There are other buildings and large tents that serve as washrooms and dining halls. There's something else unusual about the Congress Hall in Silkeborg. The entire 40 acres are shaped as a pyramid. You get some sense of the general layout by looking at the map. Stranger still, and frankly shocking, within the pyramid, the man-made structures and landscaping have been arranged so as to appear as the occultic eye of Horus when viewed from above. No doubt because of the Watchtower's mental conditioning, most of Jehovah's Witnesses will deny the obvious, but there's no getting around the fact this is intentional design. But why would Jehovah's Witnesses pay tribute to the ancient Egyptian mythological god, especially with a facility that is dedicated to Jehovah God? There's only one reasonable explanation. Just so there's no mistake, there's more than merely an eye here. Notice the campgrounds are laid out exactly as Horus' headdress appears in various images and reliefs. Of course, persons on the ground could not possibly recognize that the meeting place was laid out in such a fashion. It is like crop circles. You can only discern the full design by looking down from some vantage point in the sky. But when viewed from above, the intelligent design becomes evident. It is worth noting that when the convention grounds were built, the internet was just coming of age, and at the time there was no Google Earth at our fingertips. There were no drones either. Incidentally, someone in Denmark was apparently intrigued and flew a drone over the Congress Hall. Here is some footage. While the Danish Jehovah's Witnesses who annually meet at the convention grounds have no doubt been unaware that they were convening in the eye of Horus, as it were, Jehovah is not oblivious. But before considering God's point of view, this shocking exposure of the convention site raises the question, a number of questions actually, but for starters, who is responsible for this? And why would anyone bother to do it? And what is the purpose of it? We live in a world of symbols. Perhaps the most powerful symbol is that associated with Christianity, or, from Jehovah's Witnesses' perspective, the symbol of Christendom. But symbols are everywhere, and the Eye of Horus is one of the most prominent. Here is the familiar Eye of Providence, as it's also called, the all-seeing eye, in the capstone of an Egyptian pyramid printed on the $1 Federal Reserve note. But the eye of Horus is everywhere, as if keeping an eye on us. Here are a few common corporate logos that have modernized the eye. It is not my intention to delve into the deep things of Satan, but since Jehovah's Witnesses have come to be associated with an occult symbol, even though unknowingly, I feel it is my duty to reveal the source of the evil and what it portends for the future. For many years there have been rumors that Charles Taze Russell was a Mason. Even though he denied being one, he was undeniably heavily influenced by them. That is evident by the fact that the original Watchtower magazines featured the cross and crown emblem used by the Masons and other secret societies. Here is a Masonic ring. Not only that, but the winged sun, an occult symbol also connected to Horus, was displayed on the cover of every one of the 7 volumes of the Studies in the Scriptures. By the way, Horus was part of the Egyptian triad, he being the son of the god Osiris and the goddess Isis, which, as we know, morphed into Christendom's trinity hundreds of years ago. But what are the Masons all about? Basically, Masons are a men's club made up of different levels, each higher level more secretive and exclusive than the lower level. Sort of like a pyramid. Some call the upper level the Illuminati, the enlightened ones. Masonry is used as a recruiting grounds to train and deploy capable and influential individuals. The highest level of initiates occupy the most prominent places in society, in law enforcement, the military, the judiciary, the media. They are seated in government, business, and finance, and yes, in religion. At the apex of the pyramid is the empire, the British crown, and the nexus of the global financial system, the City of London. The ultimate goal of the empire is total world domination and the destruction of all vestiges of Christianity. To that end, Masonry promotes the corruption and degradation of the population in general through entertainment and subversion of nations and institutions in order to condition society to abandon classical culture, democracy, and republican concepts, and accept their own eventual enslavement under global communism. This is the meaning of the esoteric symbol on the dollar. It is an expressed intent, a work yet undone. As Jehovah's Witnesses know, Egypt was the first empire of Bible prophecy. Less appreciated is that in prophecies such as Isaiah and Ezekiel, Egypt foreshadows America, also symbolized in Daniel as the King of the South. But it is the City of London and its offshore island empire that is in the role of the King of the North. The pyramid on the dollar represents America, the 7th world power. What then does the hovering capstone symbolize? It represents the New World Order, Novus Ordo Seclorum. In prophecy, it will be manifest as the last kingdom, what the 17th chapter of Revelation depicts as the 8th king. The 8th king is destined to rule the world for a short period of time, a symbolic 1 hour, during which time Christianity in all its forms will be liquidated. And Revelation reveals that the 8th king springs from the 7, which includes ancient Egypt and the Anglo-American dyad. The Anglo-American duo are depicted in the prophecy of Daniel as both the iron and the clay, 2 incompatible systems of empire and republicanism, which is surely what we have in the American-British alliance, the so-called special relationship. The prophecy of Daniel also portrays the same two entities as the king of the north and south, at least in the run-up to the time of the end. The 11th chapter of Daniel foretells the putting in place of a disgusting thing in God's sanctuary. The appearance of a disgusting thing in a holy place is also a prominent feature of the sign of Christ's return. Although apostasy is generally thought of in terms of religious corruption, Daniel 11:32 informs us that the king of the north is the source of apostasy. It says, "And those who act wickedly against the covenant, he will lead into apostasy by means of smooth words," he being the king of the north. This development takes place prior to the beginning of the time of the end, before the conclusion. Interestingly, the British secret spy agency known as MI5 uses as its logo the occultic pyramid. As an example of their technique and reach, the well-known Satanist Aleister Crowley was recruited as a spy for British intelligence back before the First World War. Given the prevalence of Masonic symbols within the Watchtower, it is evident that the organization has been infiltrated by London's Masonic agents. Of note, at the same time the governing body signed off on plans to build a Congress Hall in Denmark, the Watchtower also became an associate-level NGO in partnership with the United Nations. And it was the same Lloyd Berry who dedicated the Temple of Horus to Jehovah who also signed the application and the annual accreditation forms submitted to the Department of Information at the United Nations, at least up until his death in 1999. Being an accredited NGO required the Watchtower to use a portion of its resources to educate the public about the UN's many programs, which it faithfully did. Keeping in mind the goal of the empire is global government, to complete the loop, we may expect the United Nations to become the eighth king in the near future, after the central banks call in their loans and collapse the present system. Thus, the capstone with the leering eye of Horus will finally be put into place. Then we may expect the disgusting thing to bring desolation. As regards the Masonic symbols the Watchtower has used and continues to embrace in the instance of the Danish Congress Hall, we should not suppose that these are merely innocuous symbols. Nor should we dismiss the subliminal images that have appeared in Watchtower literature as a work of a mere prankster. If the subliminals were merely a childish prank, why depict occult images? For example, in the Live Forever publication, why is the thief making off with an Illuminati eye of Horus pendant dangling from his bag of booty? As stated already, symbols have power, and some symbols are charged with magical powers, or so they are intended. On a website called Vigilant Citizen that exposes the occult influence in popular culture, this is what is stated regarding certain corporate logos. Considering the fact that members of occult societies like the Freemasons study magic and the power of symbols, there is little doubt that many corporate logos apply this ancient knowledge. Some logos are even suspected to be sigils, symbols that have been magically charged to focus the subconscious to perform particular tasks. In other words, they're more powerful than you think. What is a sigil? Here is what Wikipedia has to say about it. A sigil is a symbol used in magic. The term has usually referred to a type of pictorial signature of a demon or other entity. In modern usage, especially in the context of chaos magic, it refers to a symbolic representation of the magician's desired outcome. In all likelihood, the Masonic symbols that used to appear on the covers of Watchtower magazines and books, as well as the creepy subliminal images in more recent publications, and certainly the massive Eye of Horus in Denmark, are magically charged sigils intended to evoke the power of the devil. Now we may better understand Jehovah's judgments contained in prophecy. The first chapter of Isaiah is directed to God's sons who have rebelled against him. Although it is set in ancient times, Jehovah is really speaking to those in the new covenant who would be on earth when Christ returns. That is evident by reason of the fact that the second chapter of Isaiah, which is really a continuation of the first, is fulfilled in the final part of the days. The ascension of the house of Jehovah is in the aftermath of the destruction of God's once holy city where he had placed his name. In other words, in modern times, upon Jehovah's Witnesses. With this knowledge, consider Isaiah 1:13, where Jehovah speaks to his rebellious sons, saying to them, "I cannot put up with the use of magical power along with your solemn assembly." But what is the purpose of the magical sigils? The Apostle Paul explained to the Thessalonians that God would allow Satan to empower a man of lawlessness who would wield a deluding influence. Backed by a powerful operation of Satan, using every powerful work and lying signs and wonders and every unrighteous deception, Paul revealed that the man of lawlessness promotes a false parousia. That is why in context, Paul forewarned Christians not to believe official-sounding announcements claiming that the presence has begun and the day of Jehovah is here. Paul assured us we can dismiss the letters sent even by those who claim to have apostolic authority, because the presence of Christ will not take place until the apostasy comes first. The Watchtower has announced the presence of Christ from the very beginning. In fact, for over a half-century, the Watchtower proclaimed that the parousia had begun in 1874. Was that not a delusion? And to this day, the deluding influence has convinced Jehovah's Witnesses that the presence of Christ began in 1914. In all probability, the secret cult of Horus among Jehovah's Witnesses have supercharged their parousia delusion by casting a magic spell through the use of sigils. Speaking in the present, Paul said the mystery of this lawlessness was already in operation. Surely that is what we are witnessing now. But we may expect the apostates within the leadership of the Watchtower to lead the organization into complete opposition to Christ when he comes. After all, the scripture says the man of lawlessness stands in opposition. Although Jehovah's Witnesses will scoff and excuse the Watchtower, Jehovah will not. Since Satan has laid his claim on Jehovah's organization, just as he has done in times past, God is going to let him have it. The organization, that is. This will be on full display when the man of lawlessness sits down in the temple of God, publicly showing himself to be a god. Then the manifestation of Christ will bring him to nothing. That is when the harvest will take place, during the conclusion, when Christ will dispatch his powerful angels, and they will collect out from his kingdom, his congregation, all things that cause stumbling and people who practice lawlessness, and pitch them into the fiery furnace. Then the prophecy of Isaiah will come true. Now I will rise up, says Jehovah. Now I will exalt myself. Now I will magnify myself. You conceive dry grass and give birth to stubble. Your own spirit will consume you like a fire, and peoples will become as the burnings of lime. As thorns cut down, they will be set ablaze with fire. You who are far away, listen to what I will do. And you who are nearby, acknowledge my might. The sinners in Zion are in dread. Trembling has seized the apostates. Who of us can live where there is consuming fire? Who of us can live with unquenchable flames?